Hello, my friends. Welcome to Tarot class with the Mermaid Mystic. Today we're going to be talking about the Two of Swords and its links to other tarot cards in the tarot and how this can help you understand the meaning of this card. So, without further ado, we're going to dive into the Two of Swords. So, as we can see in Pamela Coleman Smith's art, okay, let's get close here. So, we have a figure sitting on a stone bench. Behind this figure, there is water. There is a waxing crescent moon in the sky. They are holding two really big swords that are probably pretty heavy. Their arms are crossed across their heart and they are blindfolded. So immediately the imagery lets us know a few things. So water generally is associated with intuition and our emotions. With the hands crossed over this figure's heart, this person has closed off themselves to their intuition and their emotions, which is making it harder for them to make decisions. We can see there's an overemphasis on logic because swords in the tarot are associated with communication, words, logic, etc. So being here, these are ginormous swords. Can you imagine holding swords like that, like this? It would be really hard. So we're feeling this is not really a very fun way to feel. Things feel heavy. The stone bench is letting us know things feel heavy. The stone ground is feeling heavy, but behind this person, there's all this water. So this usually rolls up. And again, twos are about relationships and decisions and kind of duality. So this is showing up when you're feeling stuck and having a hard time making decisions because you've closed yourself off to your inner wisdom and you're relying too much on, I find sometimes with this card, you can be thinking too much about what other people think. What do you think I should do? What do you think I should do? We've all been there where you're like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And again, that's really cutting yourself off from your inner wisdom. Now, with that waxing crescent, this is the beginning of the sword's journey, right? So we're at 2, we're going to go through 10 and then through the core cards. So this is a journey. You're at the beginning of something. I always see this kind of as an opportunity to take the blindfold off by tapping into your feelings. So whatever you have to do to tap into your inner wisdom, whether that's meditation, journaling, talking to a counselor, etc., but get back into your heart space and your inner wisdom. And then when you do that, the blindfold can be lifted. And then you can see with that waxing moon what you can be working on growing by making that decision. So to add some depth to this, these are the cards that I associate with the Two of Swords in the tarot, and I will also explain their associations. So all twos are associated with the High Priestess because this figure is the second figure in the major arcana. So, and again, twos are about duality, decisions, relationships. Now, the High Priestess is sat between two pillars we see here, and one is black and one is white. This isn't to say that we're black and white thinking. This is to say that this figure sits between it. So is not about duality, is about nuance, is about the nuance between this or that kind of binary thinking. The High Priestess, as we can see, there's a lot of water imagery with the High Priestess. We can see that this figure's robe kind of looks like water at the bottom, and we got a moon crown there. And in fact, the moon is the planetary association with the High Priestess, and we do have the moon featured in this card as well. So this is really also important to remember that the High Priestess is such a figure of power. I was reading that these two pillars are supposed to be the pillars outside the Temple of Solomon. So they're representing wisdom, but they're supposed to be 27 feet tall, which means that the figure of the High Priestess is I don't know, 22 feet tall, 24 feet tall. That's letting you know it's about being bigger than just these little things. Sometimes we can make our life feel very small. We forget that it's a great web of life. We're part of a collective. Our spirit guides, our dreams, the other realms. So I'm not saying that in the Two of Swords, you'll have to be I've got to go to another realm. But it is sometimes we can have very limited, small thinking when we don't tap into our inner wisdom. And when things feel very small, it's really hard to feel creative or in channeling your inner wisdom, your inspiration from whatever you want to say, your higher self, your spirit guides. You know how sometimes when you're trying to think of a problem, you're overanalyzing and nothing comes. So you go for a walk and then bing. So you might feel a wee bit like that in the Two of Swords. And what you want to do, the medicine for that is the High Priestess, is remembering okay, not making things so nitpicky, so micromanagey, so small. I think at least here, I'm in Canada, so kind of Western or colonial societies, we can be so linear. We can be actually very black and white. We can be very micromanagey about all the little details. And I always feel that High Priestess really pulling back, look at your life from the lens of spirit, from a bigger picture. And then sometimes our little things, the little things we're nitpicking, they don't seem as limiting when we can see it from spirit. And then we can also see more options. We can see things more clearly. So in this way, when you get that Two of Swords with that High Priestess rolling up, you can remember to take a step back, kind of look at the bigger picture and really connect with your inner wisdom so that you can feel more empowered making your decisions. Because really, I'm sure you've all felt this before, being decisive carries a certain amount of power with it, doesn't it? When you decide on something and you make that decision, you feel that click within yourself. Hey, things move, things line up. It just does. The other card I associate with the Two of Swords is actually Justice. So in the Smith Rider-Waite deck, you'll find Justice is number 11. In decks previous to this deck, as well as decks based on the Thoth Tarot deck by Aleister Crowley, you will actually find that Strength is number 11 and Justice is number 8. So there has been a switcheroo here. I've read that it was because Arthur Waite wanted the astrology to make sense. So Strength being Leo, if it follows Chariot, which is Cancer, then leads to Virgo, the Hermit, made more sense. If you read Rachel Pollack's book, 78 Degrees of Wisdom, great arguments for both. So you do you. But with this deck, with the Smith Rider-Waite, which is predominantly what I study, being that it's number 11, 1 + 1 = 2. Yeah, tarot and math, that's what I got for you. Comes back to the High Priestess. And Justice, we can see, is again between two pillars. There is some similarity between the artwork here. We have figures staring right at you, right? We are between two pillars. There is a veil behind each of these figures. So in the High Priestess, if you're really tapping into your inner wisdom and your intuition and your pools of like magic and dreams and, you know, journeying and all this other really these magical associations, in Justice, it's like, well, what you gonna do? Like, okay, great. You went on the journey, or you had the really like psychedelic experience, or you had that really empowering dream, or you had the breakthrough in counseling or whatever. Justice is like, and now what? You go forth. And I also think it's really cool being number 11. It's the halfway mark in the major arcana, which means that you are halfway along in a journey. And this is now a different experience that you can have. This can bring you to, you can do things the way you used to do them, or in Justice by weighing your options. Hey, Sword of Truth, being very decisive, making decisive decisions. This helps you to move forward on your journey. Really cool with Justice. Justice, we can see on this person's crown, there is a little jewel for that third eye. So there is an association with Justice that justice, or you know what I mean, like balance in your life. Sometimes this card is called balance. Sometimes it's referred to as karma. It is logical. Like you do kind of have to like weigh the scales and you have to be practical and objective. But again, there is still that you have to come back to your intuition. We got to sense also what feels right, what feels fair. And we know this. Like if you were to think about justice in like a legal sense, we know that the law does not and has not historically always represented morality. Like, no. So in order for things to truly be just and fair for yourself and others, we do have to trust our intuition. So again, with that Two of Swords, there is here, and we can see this figure looking right at you. Whereas this figure has a Sword of Truth aimed high and their scales are here balanced, this figure feels kind of small and powerless. So both of these cards, while a High Priestess is considerably more like this veil of like beyond the spirit, right? With those pomegranates, we get that Persephone vibe. We get that Queen of the Underworld. We're going deep. And with Justice, it's just like, okay, now what? Make that decision. Sword of Truth. No, no dancing around this, no waffling. Weigh those odds. Be objective, trust your intuition, go forth. These are considerably more empowered energies than the Two of Swords. And both of these have kind of magic for you, trusting your intuition and being a bit no nonsense, like really stepping up to the plate, shoulders back, not like this, shoulders back, heart forward, decision making. Finally, the last card I associate with the Two of Swords, not to say that you can't associate other cards with the Two of Swords, just that another card I associate is the Queen of Swords. The reason why I do is because the way I was taught about tarot is that the Queen of Swords is associated with Libra, and Libra is the associated sign with Justice. Now, and you can see Libra is the scales, right? Anyone know a Libra? They can be... Their version of fair matters. I'm not saying, sometimes they can be very diplomatic and sometimes they can be very fair, but their version of fair matters to them. If you agree with it or not, that's another thing. Another thing with Libra, by the way, this card is Moon in Libra, which is another reason I link them. And this card is the Moon. Sorry, all these little breadcrumbs of connection. Moon in Libra is really asking you to reflect on, so that Libra nature, your choices, your decisions. Also, Libra is ruled by Venus, so like remembering that your heart matters. Remembering what you value matters, what you love matters. Anyways, Queen of Swords. I love the Queen of Swords. I love the Queen of Swords. Sometimes this figure gets a bad rap. Not here, not on my page. So there are some similarities again. While the Queen of Swords is not facing us, the Queen of Swords is facing to the side. I have an inkling. I haven't read this, but sometimes I wonder if it's because the court cards, I don't know. Like, is this like help us really think about someone else in our life, or someone guidance that we really need, like to go to someone else? Because the court cards can sometimes be us or someone else. It's just things I like to think about. I don't have an answer, just musings on tarot. But anyways, because some of the queens do face you, but there's something about this one that just kind of with that to the side, it's almost like, I also feel like, I'm like, am I looking up at this person? Like, anyways, I really like this card. But in terms of justice, so we can see both of them are holding a sword and it's straight up. So no nonsense. Both of them have yellow crowns. Both of them are sitting straight. Now with the Queen of Swords, this is a figure who's very no nonsense. In older tarot decks, this figure was known as the Widow. And in Rachel Pollack's book, 70 Degrees of Wisdom, this figure of all the queens, has the strongest link of turning pain into wisdom. And that's one of the reasons the Queen of Swords is so no nonsense. So she is the Queen of the Swords, which is sometimes arguably the suit that has some of the most challenging lessons in the tarot. So pertaining to the minor arcana. So this is someone who has like been through some heartache, been through some things. So that's one of the reasons I find this figure very no nonsense and very blunt. It's just because they've been there before. They were there when they didn't have strong enough boundaries, and they saw how that not only didn't help them, it didn't actually help others. So this is kind of like a clear is kind of energy. And even if it seems kind of like harsh, sometimes we really need that. So we can see there's this blue sky behind them. Head is above the clouds, not in the clouds. Hey, and the Sword of Truth is straight up. You can see the sword has kind of a lighter side and then a darker side. So being able to see the different shades of a situation with clarity. And with that hand forward, like, come, I will give you guidance. It might be a bit like a shot of whiskey, but I will give it to you. Another thing that's really cool about the Queen of Swords is I read this last year and it changed my life. So you can see the hand has like a bracelet on it, right? It's like a cord, like some kind of rope. Some authors suggest that that is actually a piece of the rope from the Eight of Swords. The Eight of Swords, where the figure is bound and tied up. Now, this isn't actually associated with the Two of Swords, but I guess you could link them all together, right? Gosh, I'm sorry. I wasn't going to bring this up, and I was like, no, I have to bring this up. So I'm bringing up your Eight of Swords. So this figure is bound by rope, and it's a little bit echoing the Two of Swords, because in the Two of Swords we're blindfolded, but this one now we're bound. I'll do another video on this, but this is definitely a card of like feeling overthinking, anxious, problem-based thinking, overly critical, and feeling powerless because of it. So I read that this rope is now her bracelet to remind this figure's self of when they were not empowered, of when they gave their power away, so they never do it again. So it's a very empowered card. It's a card of, you know, if you've been through hard times, knowing that you can turn pain into wisdom can be, there's no pressure to do it. But if you know that you can take some of those hard things and they can make you stronger or wiser, helping yourself, helping others, that, you know, that can be a little bit of a help. So you do kind of want to channel that Queen of Swords energy when the Two of Swords comes up, so that you can feel more confident in your decisions. Another thing too is like this figure, even if they're not looking right at us, they are looking straight ahead. You know, their eyes are not down, being straightforward, whereas this person's blindfold. So again, it's that clear gaze. So it's the clear gaze that comes from clear mind, trusting your intuition, learning from past mistakes, and no nonsense. You know, admit the hard stuff, but it'll set you free. So there you go. That's my tarot lesson for today. I hope it was helpful. Have a wonderful day.